Hello, in this lecture we will be recording transactions, government transactions for the government-wide level. We will have the trial balance over here, including the chart of accounts and the beginning trial balance numbers. We will enter the data into the adjusting column and then have a quick worksheet that we can see our ending numbers within that format. Of course, the trial balance is going to be in order of assets, liabilities, and then the fund balance and temporary accounts, which are similar to revenue and expenditures, revenue and expenses, I should say, in the government-wide level accounts here. So these are going to be like the income statement, like the temporary accounts in a for-profit organization. We've got the data over here on the left-hand side. We're going to use this data to record journal entries right here in the blue section. Then we will be recording or posting those journal entries to the blue section of the trial balance. Starting off with the data from G1, where we have estimated revenues from tax, real property, interest, penalties, license and permits, fines and forfeitures, intergovernmental and changes for services, the types of revenue totaling up to $1,283,628. Then we have the appropriations for the general government, the public safety, public works, and culture and recreation. We're then showing property taxes levied of $692,400, and that's going to be the property taxes levied will be what we're going to record as a receivable. So we recorded the property taxes. We have property taxes that are going to be received, and therefore we have a receivable, and similar to income at that point in time, that's the point in time where we have a collectible item, and therefore we're going to record the receivable and the related income from it or revenue from it. So we're looking for taxes receivable, and we want the current portion. So we're taking current in X6. We're going to copy that, right click, copy, put it over here in J5, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. The amount will be equal to, scrolling down to property taxes levied, this $692,400. Then we are going to credit the taxes for the real property. So we have taxes for real property here. We're going to put that in the general fund for revenue. So we're scrolling down to the revenue section, and we have the general revenue for taxes and real property. Here we go. And we're going to copy that in X36, scroll up, put that on the bottom, revenue being an expense accounts, expenses have credit balances. We will therefore credit it in order to make it going up, doing the same thing to it. So I'm going to put a negative and point to this 671,628 and enter. And then we have a difference here between the receivable and the general revenue. I'm going to use the plug formula to see what that difference is. This number, this 692,400 minus the 671,628 will give us the 20,772. I'm going to use the negative sum formula right here in cell L7, negative SUM of these four cells gives us the 20,772. That is going to be our uncollectible portion at this time. So we're going to scroll back over here, and we're going to say that of these taxes receivable that we will be recording, we have an allowance, the amount that will not be receivable, or we are estimating not to be receivable. Copying X7, right click, paste it in J7, pasting it 1, 2, 3. So then we're going to record this out, so we could then go to the taxes receivable in this is what we're going to record. We're going to record it to the trial balance, and we're going to record it to cell Z6. Z6 is equal to this 692,400 in K5 and enter. We can then record the allowance, which is right underneath it. So I'm going to record this one next just because it's right underneath the current receivables. So here it is here, here it is here. We're going to record it in Z7. So Z7 is equal to 20,772. There we have that. Then we're looking for the general revenue account. So general revenue, scrolling down, we have the general revenue for taxes and real property. General revenue, taxes and real property down in Z36. The Z36 then equals and scrolling up to this 671, 628 and enter. That amount should go up to the 671, 628. And if we scroll all the way down, we'll be back in balance, meaning we have green zeros, meaning the debits minus the credits are back in balance, equaling out to 0. I'm going to scroll back over to the data. I'm going to highlight this information and make it green, and we're moving on to the next item in our data. So that's all we need for G1. Moving on to G2. So G2 is going to be equal to this item here. We're going to put in G2, and we have cash received during the year. We've got the current property taxes, delinquent property taxes, interest and penalties receivable, and due from state government. Those are going to be assets that we have collected on, so receivable type accounts generally that we have collected on. Then we have the revenue type accounts that we have collected on, license and permits, fines and forfeitures, intergovernmental, and charges for general government, and charges culture and recreation. So let's record those receivables first. So these are going to be items we got cash today for something that we recorded basically as some type of revenue in the past. Therefore, they are on the books as assets, and we need to reduce those assets. So we're going to say we've got current property taxes. So we got current property taxes, and that's going to be a receivable. So here we go. And we could also note that we are going to be receiving cash. Is cash affected in this journal entry? It is. It's going to go up. Therefore, we can do the same thing to it. So we know we're going to debit cash. So I'm going to put the cash on top by copying cash, putting it in J9, right-click, paste 1, 2, 3. So there's cash. Now we're going to go through the rest of these items, and they're going to be credits. I'm not going to put the cash number in there yet. I'm going to sum up the cash number at the end once we put in all the other information, starting with the taxes receivable. Now it's a receivable, it's an asset, it has a debit balance. If we get paid, it should be going down. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a credit. So I'm going to copy the taxes receivable. We will put that in J10, right-click, paste 1, 2, 3, and the amount will be a credit. So we want to take this number and make it a credit. I'm going to do that by putting a negative, then pointing to that number and enter. Next item, we have delinquent property taxes. So delinquent property taxes, we're going to say that is going to be right here. Again, another receivable. We now got paid on the delinquent property taxes, so it's an asset. Assets are going to go down. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it. So I'm going to copy that. We're going to put it in J11, right-click, paste 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to scroll back over here, and we've got this 94,000 needs to go there. We need to make it a negative, so I'm going to put negative of this number and enter. So there is that item. Then we're looking for interest. Let me see this again. We're looking for interest and penalties. Interest and penalties receivable. So that's going to be this item here. People owing us for interest and penalties. It's an asset. It's a receivable. It has a debit balance. We need to make it go down. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a credit. So we will copy that, put it in J12, right click and paste it. 1, 2, 3. Amount will then be here under the 94. We're looking for that 13,708, but we need to make it negative. So we're going to say negative of the 13,708, and there is that. Next item we're going to say is this 66,000 due from state government. So again, it's due from. That's going to be an asset, another type of receivable. So we have the due from state government asset debit balance. We need to make it go down because we're getting paid, and therefore the receivable is going down. So we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a credit. So we are in J13, right click and paste it. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to scroll over to L13 and say negative of this 66,000. So there is that. Now we're going to record the revenue accounts. We've got license and permits, fines and forfeitures, intergovernmental, charges for government, for the general government, charges for culture and recreation. So we're going to scroll down and pick those items up. So we have license and permits, fines, and charges for the general, the yellow items. We're going to say that those items are going to go into the program revenue. So those items are going into program revenue type accounts. So here we have revenue type accounts, the blue accounts, the temporary accounts, the dark blue accounts. And revenue type accounts have credit balances just as they do for a for-profit organization. We need to make it go up. Therefore, we're going to do the same thing to it, which in this case is another credit. So I'm going to copy that, scroll up, put it in J14, right click, and paste it 1, 2, 3. Now there's a couple ways we can think about how to get this number. It's going to be the yellow item, so this, and then this add up to 462,330. We need to, however, put it in there as a negative, and we could do that by saying, putting it in there as a formula first, and say it's this, plus this, plus this, and then enter, and then make it a negative by going back on the cell, going before the C and say negative, but then we need brackets around the entire thing, or else it'll just be a negative first number, and then positive other numbers, and we'll get a different number. So that's one way we can do it here. Another way we could do it is we could say if they're all going to be negative, we could say a negative of this number, minus of this number, minus this number, and that's basically adding together 3 negative numbers, so we should come up to the same number there, same thing. All right, next item we have the intergovernmental, and that one we're going to say is actually going into public safety. So it's a program revenue. It's going into the public safety account. So we're down here in the revenue section again. We're going to group that into the type of revenue of public safety. So here we have it in X35. It's another credit balance account, as all revenue accounts are. So we're going to do the same thing to it, which is another credit because revenue generally only goes up in the credit direction. We're going to put that in J15, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. The amount will then be here in L15. We want to pick up that 64,000. We want to make it a negative, therefore instead of equals, we're going to put negative of that 64,000. And there we have that. Then we have the charges for culture and rec. And that's going to be exactly what it sounds like. We're going to scroll down to the income statement. Dark blue accounts here. We're looking for the revenue accounts. And we're looking for the specific revenue account for culture and recreation. So there it is. Revenues have credit balances. We're going to make it go up by doing the same thing to it, which is a credit as we've done in the prior accounts. So we're right clicking in J16, pasting 1, 2, 3. Then in the credit column, we're going to say that this is going to be negative of this 35,188 and enter. So there we have it. Now we want to put the cash that we're going to get here that we got, and so we could add these up. We could say that adds up. Excel says it's 1,359,840, and that's what we need to put there. But I'm going to do that with the sum function, the negative sum function, taking the sum and then flipping the sign with a negative sum brackets. If this is in the way, this bar, we can move it, like if you're not highlighting anything like that, or you can go from the bottom of the cell references up, and that's another way you can avoid that being a problem. Now we're going to post this out, and hopefully once done, we will be back in balance, meaning that the green zeros here indicating that the total debits minus the total credits are 0, and therefore the same will remain 0 after we have completed this transaction posting this journal entry. So we're going to post cash first. So here's cash. Cash is up top, and so there it is on the journal entry. Here it is on the trial balance. We are going to go to cell Z5. Z5 is equal to this K9, which is 1,359,840, and when we hit enter, that will make this amount go up in the debit direction like so. We're then going to post taxes receivable current portion. So here it is in the journal entry. Here it is on the trial balance. We're going to go to Z6. Something is in there, therefore double clicking on it, going to the end of it, we're going to say plus, and then point to the current portion of the receivable. That will make this amount go down because we have now received it, and that will make it go down. Then we have the taxes receivable delinquent. So taxes receivable delinquent up in the asset section. Here it is. We're going to record it in cell Z8. Z8 is going to be equal to 94,000. This is a debit, that's a credit, those are opposites. Therefore, it's going to make this amount go down. Then we're looking for the interest and penalties. Interest and penalties, here it is on the journal entry. Here it is on the trial balance. Here's where we're going to record it in cell Z10. Z10 is going to be equal to this 13,708. So this is a debit, that's a credit. It's going to make the 40,110 go down. Then we have the due from state government. Again, another asset account, a receivable type of account. And here it is on the trial balance. We're going to record it over here in Z12. So Z12 is equal to, scrolling over, this 66,000. There we have that. Then we've got the program revenue from the general government. So that's going to be a revenue account. So we're going to go down to the dark blue type accounts, the temporary accounts. We got the program revenue from the general government. There it is here in the trial balance. We're going to be recording it in Z33. Z33 will be equal to, scrolling up, this 462,333 and enter. So that's going to bring the revenue account up, as all revenue accounts generally do go up in the credit direction. Then we have the program revenue from the public safety operating grants, and that's going to be another revenue account. So we're going to scroll back down here. We've got program revenue from the public safety. Here we go, right here, public safety and grants. It's in cell Z35, which was going to be equal to, scrolling back up, this 64,000 there and enter. Once again, that's going to bring the balance up in the credit direction. Lastly, hopefully, and this will fix everything up, we got the program revenue for the culture and recreation. Again, a revenue, it's down in the revenue section. So we've got the general revenue from culture and recreation right here. We're going to post it in cell Z34 by saying equals, and then point to this 35,188 and enter. So there we have that. The revenue accounts are increasing, and here we have the temporary accounts balances in terms of the revenue. We're back in balance with the green zeros, so it looks good so far. And I'm going to go back over here and highlight these items, make them green, indicating we have completed that. And now we're on the next journal entry, which is going to be the data from G3. In G3, we've got the general fund. We should have payroll for the year. So we have it broken out between the general government, the public safety, public works, culture and recreation, then the total. Then we have the withholdings, which we would typically have in a for-profit organization as well, holding for the federal government and holding withholdings for the state government. So clearly what is happening is we're issuing the payroll. The gross amount's going to be recorded as an expense, and then we're going to withhold the amounts that are due for the employee's portion of their federal and state taxes. So we're looking for, these are going to be expenses then. We're looking for the general government expenses, the public safety expense, and so on. So they're going to be over here in the blue items. So we have the expense for the general government, expense for public safety, expense for public works, and culture and recreation. So here we have these. These are the expenses, and expenses have debit balances. We're going to make them go up by doing the same thing to them, which in this case is another debit. So right click and copy. Scrolling up to J18, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. The amounts will then be in K18 equal to this 207, 209. Then we have in the public safety this 496,979, and then of course we have in public works this 235,579, and in culture and recreation we have this 115,522. So that's going to be similar to when we record it in a for-profit organization, kind of like the payroll expenses, the wages expenses. Now we're going to take out from that the withholdings for both the federal and state from what would then be paid to the employees. And so we're just going to call that due to federal and due to state, meaning we're withholding it from the employees and therefore, and then owing it to the federal and state governments. And so for us, it's going to be a liability. We're holding on to that money until we pay it back out to who the employees originally owed. So liabilities have credit balances. We need to make it go up because when we issue the payroll, we're increasing the federal and state liabilities by the withholdings. So we're going to do the same thing to it as what it is, which in this case is another credit. So we'll highlight these, copy that, put that underneath, right click and paste it. 1, 2, 3. The amounts will be credits. So I'm going to go in column L, L22. It's going to be negative instead of equal. So we flip the sign of this number, this 296 for 142. And then we're going to go to L23 and say flip the sign and pick up this 117,391 and enter. And then we're going to say that the difference is going to be cash, kind of like payroll expense gross minus the withholdings is going to give us the cash that's actually going to be paid out, kind of like the net check if it was total check for everybody. And cash has a debit balance, and therefore we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a credit. Credit also being needed in order to be the plug to fix this journal entry. So the debits now add up to 1,055,288. The credits add up to 413,534. If we subtract those two numbers, we get 641,754. That's the plug we need. Gonna use the plug formula in cell L24 to get that number. That formula being negative SUM of, and then I'm just gonna highlight this whole rectangle. It's going to call it a square, but it's more like a rectangle, and then enter. So there's this 641,754. If we highlight all of it, we should now be at 0, which we are, which is a good sign. And we will now post this journal entry to the trial balance. Remember, we are in balance indicated by the green zeros, and we are going to post this information to the trial balance and hopefully remain back in balance after we have completed that task. So we've got the expenses from the general government here. We're going to post that down in the expenses area. So it's going to be a temporary account down here. So we are in Z39, which is going to be equal to this 207,209 and enter. So there's going to be the expense. Then we're going to record this expense for public safety. So here's the public safety. We're going to record that in Z40, which will be equal to this 496,979 and enter. Next, we're going to record the expense for public works. So expense for public works right there on the trial balance. We will record that in Z41 by saying equals, pointing to this 235,579 and enter. Then we have the expense for culture and recreation. So that's going to be down here in Z42, which is going to be equal to, and pointing to that 115,522 and enter. Then we've got the due to federal government, due to state government. Those are going to be these liability accounts here. We're going to go into Z22. Z22, we're posting this account journal entry to this on the trial balance, and we are going to do that in Z22, which will be equal to this 296,142 credit. And then we're going to post this due to state government to the due to state government on the trial balance, and we'll post it in Z23 equal to, point of that 117,391. Then we're going to scroll up to cash. Something is in it. Therefore, we're going to double click on it, go to the end of it, and plus, and scroll down to the cash item. That's 641,754 and enter, and that brings the cash down. We should be back in balance indicated by the green zeros at the bottom of the trial balance. I'm going to scroll back over to the data and make that green, indicating that that has been done, and we are now on G4, so G4 is what we will be working with this time. And it says that we have invoices for goods recorded as encumbrances in prior transactions. So we've got the expenditures and encumbrances. We're looking at the expenditures in this case. That's what we need for the government-wide level, and therefore we're gonna pick up the expenditures for the general government, the public safety, public works, equipment, and culture. So let's bring that over. The expenditure, those are going to be down here in, or they're going to be the expenses in the on the government-wide level types of accounts, and that's going to be in the temporary section in the dark blue items over here on the trial balance. Looking for first the expenses for the general government. So we're looking expenses, general government. We're going to copy that, and again the expenses are of course debit balance accounts. we're going to make them go up by doing the same thing to it, which is another debit. Expenses always generally going up. So I'm going to copy that. We're going to scroll up to J26, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. The amount will be in the debit column in K26. I'm going to say that is equal to, scrolling over to the data, equal to that 37,910. So there is that item. Then we're looking for the public safety, again in the expenses area. Another expense in that it has a debit balance. We're going to make it go up by doing the same thing to it. We are in X40, copying the public safety, putting that in J27, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. We're going to record the amount, which is going to be that 70,162. That's going to be in K27, equal to 70,162. So there we have that. Then we have the public works, again another expense account. Here it is on the trial balance. Another expense, we need to debit it. I'm going to copy the public works expense, put that in J28, right click, paste it 1, 2, 3, picking up the number over here, which is going to be equal to the 64,827, and enter. Next we have equipment. That's going to be an asset type account. So we're going to scroll up to the assets. We have the equipment asset here, and it's a debit balance account. We're going to get more of it, so we're going to debit it. We're going to do the same thing to it, copying it, putting it down here in J29, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. Amount will be equal to the equipment of that 12,936. So in K29 equal to 12,936, and enter. Next we have culture and recreation. That's going to be another expense down here in the expense area. And we have culture and recreation. So I'm going to copy that. Once again, we're going to debit the expense account, paste it 1, 2, 3, and the amount will be equal to this 43,275. So now we'll take that journal entry and we need one more piece to it, and that's going to be the vouchers payable. So we're going to take these expenditures and we're going to put them into the payable account, and the payable account will be a liability account in the orange section, therefore being a credit balance, which is what we need in order to make this journal entry work. It's going to be called the vouchers payable. So I'm going to copy vouchers payable and put that in the credit section, right clicking and pasting it 1, 2, 3. Obviously the amount will be equal to all of these 229,111. However, it will be a negative, and therefore we're going to put it negative credit. It will be a credit, and therefore we'll put a negative in front of it. I'm going to use the negative sum formula to do that, just because I believe that's the best way to do it. And so we're going to say negative sum brackets of these cells, and that'll give us the plug. And therefore, if we add up all of it, or highlight all of it, or select all of it, Excel will give us the 0, indicating that it adds up to 0 and therefore is in balance, the debits equaling the credits. Let's post this out now. We're going to say expenses for the general government. First item we will be posting. So we'll go to expenses, general government here. So here it is in the journal entry. Here it is on the trial balance. Here's where we're going to post it in Z39. We'll double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, and then point to this 37,910 and enter. Then we're going to post the expense for public safety, and then we have public safety here, and we're going to post it to the trial balance. I'm going to double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, point to that 70,162 and enter. That's going to bring these amounts up, of course, because the expenses are going up in the debit direction. Then we have the expenses for sorry, that last one was, of course, public safety. I hope we recorded that in the right spot. Let me double check that if we recorded that in the right spot. It's going to public safety. All right, looks good. Next one is public works. So that's going to be the 64,827. And we're going to public works. That's going to be here. And that's going to be in Z41. Double clicking on it, going to the end of it, plus. And we are pointing to the public works. That's 64,827 and enter. Next, we have the equipment, an asset account. So we're going to scroll up. That's up here in the assets section. So there it is. And we're going to post that to Z18 cell equals the expense account of 12,936 and enter. And then we have the expense for culture and recreation. Scrolling down for the expenses for culture and recreation, something's in it, double clicking on it, going to the end, and plus, pointing to that 43,275 and enter. Then we have the vouchers payable. So vouchers payable, that's going to be a credit up here in the orange area. Liability account in Z21, we're going to say that that equals this 229,111, bringing that liability amount up. So there is that. Now we're going to scroll back over. We're going to say that we are going to highlight these items and make them green because we have completed that. We are now moving to G5. So this is equal to G5, where we have the state to send cash next year. So basically we're saying that there's this obligation for the state to send us cash. And that means that we basically have a receivable from the state at this point in time. And we also have some kind of revenue account that we're going to have to record for this transaction happening. So we're going to say that if there's an obligation for the state to now pay us $46,000, then we have a receivable. So we're going to look for some type of receivable up here in the assets section because receivables are going to be assets or are assets due from state government. That looks good. It has a debit balance, so we're going to make it go up by doing the same thing to it, which in this case is another debit. So I'm going to copy that, scroll back down, we're going to put that in J33, right click, paste it, 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to say that it should go into some type of revenue in the dark blue area. We're looking for program revenues for public safety. We're going to say that the interstate was public safety type items. And so we're going to say this is going to be the revenue account in X35. Right click, copy, pasting it in L34, right clicking, pasting, 1, 2, 3. Scrolling back over, we're going to pick up that 46,000 in K33, saying equals, pointing to the 46,000, and we want that same 46,000 in the credit column as well. Let's post this out now. We're going to say due from the state government. That's going to be an asset. So we're up here. We're going to say due from the state government is right here. We're going to go in cell Z12, double click, go to the end of it, plus scroll back down, 46,000 and enter. So we've increased that. Then we're going to go to the program revenue for public works, program revenue, public safety. So here we have that. We're going to go in Z35, double click, go to the end of it, and plus, point to that 46,000. That 64,000 will go up in the credit section direction to 110. In this case, putting us back in balance indicated by the green zeros. And now we can scroll back down, highlight G5, right click, make it green. Moving to next journal entry of G6. So G6, we've got payments made. So we have a voucher payment due to the federal government, due to state government. So this is clearly what we're paying out now. We're making the payments for these liabilities, paying off the liabilities. We're paying them with cash. So we can ask our general question, is cash affected? Yes, we're paying cash, and therefore cash has a debit balance. We need to make it go down. We're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a credit. So I'm going to copy cash. We're going to put it on the bottom. So we're going to say that there's going to be 3 accounts above it. So I'm going to go 3 accounts down. So here's G6, we're 3 accounts down. Right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. Now we could add up the amount right now, but I'm just going to recognize that it's a credit. Put all the debits in there, and then use the negative sum function to record the amount of cash. So we're going to say vouchers payable. We paid off the vouchers payable, the liability account of $280,000. That's how much we paid of the payable. So here's the vouchers payable. There's $365,138 that we owe. We paid off some of it. It's a credit balance. We need to debit it, the opposite thing, to make it go down. So I'm going to copy vouchers payable. Scroll back down. It's going to be the first debit. And it's going to be in K36 equal to this 280,000 and enter. Then we have due to federal government. So that's going to be, let's see, due to. So that's going to be a liability. And so it's due to federal government. It has a credit balance. We need to make it go down. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it. So I'm going to copy that, which will be a debit. Put that underneath, right click, paste it, 1, 2, 3, scrolling back over. We're going to say that this is equal to this 292,602. There we have that. Next item, we're going to say due to state government. So again, due to state government is going to be a liability. We owe the state government. Here it is here, liability account. And we need to make it go down. It's a credit. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which in this case is a debit. So we're going to right click and paste it, 1, 2, 3. The amount will be picked up from these numbers over here, the 116.26, and enter. Then we're going to add those up. If we add these up, we've got 688, 628. That's going to be the credit. I'm going to do that with the negative sum formula by saying negative sum and picking up those three numbers. So there we have that. Then if we highlight the entire thing, we are at 0, meaning the debits equal the credits, and therefore we can now post this one. So we got the vouchers payable. Gonna scroll back up, vouchers payable. Here it is on the journal entry. Here it is on the trial balance. This is where we're gonna post it in Z21. Double click, go to the end of it, plus this 280,000. That'll make this credit go down. So there we have that. Then we're gonna say due to federal government. There it is on the journal entry. There it is on the trial balance. Here's where we're gonna post it in Z22. Double clicking, going to the end of it, plus scrolling back down the 282,602. There we have that. Then we have due to the state government. So here we have due to state government in Z23. Double click, go to the end of it, plus scrolling back down 116.26 and enter. Then we've got cash. Cash has a credit balance. Scrolling up, we got the cash has a debit balance. We're going to credit it, making it go down. Something's in it in Z5, so we're going to double click on it, go to the end, plus scroll back down, pick up that 688, 628, and there we have that, bringing the cash down. Going to scroll back, and that should put us back in balance. Let's double check that. So we have green zeros indicating that the total debits equal the total credits. This is what we have in the trial balance at this point in time. Let's do a slow scroll. And there we have that. Going to scroll back over to our data in G6. Highlight those, make it green. We have completed that. We are now on G7, the last one for this session that we're looking at here. And it says that current year receivables are now delinquent, as well as the allowance portion of them as well. And I'm actually pulling out the number for the allowance portion. It's actually going to be whatever is in the allowance portion is going to be going to the delinquent section. So what we're saying here is that we have the receivables that are current and the allowance related to them. So this is how much is received. This is the allowance. So we expect to get 4714. All of that is now delinquent. It's past due. So we got to move all of this from here to the taxes receivable for delinquent to here. So we're going to say that the receivables, we got to move the taxes receivable out. That has a credit balance. We need to make it go down to 0. So that's the first thing we can think of. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that on the bottom. Right click, paste it, 1, 2, 3. Now, we gave the number here, but we could just pick up the number up here. It's the 67,786. So it's a credit, negative 67,786. And then we could say that we're just going to put that into the allowance. I'm sorry, we're going to put that into the delinquent receivable. So it's still a receivable, but it's no longer current. Now it's delinquent. This is also an asset. It has a debit balance. It's another receivable account. It needs to go up because we've now reclassified the current receivable to delinquent. Copying that, scrolling back down, we're going to put that on top, and we're going to say that that is negative of this number. Okay, so there is that, and then we have the allowance portion. So we can see that we have the allowance here. This too needs to go down to 0. So we have the allowance at a credit of $20,772. We need to make it go down to 0. We're going to do the opposite thing to it, which will be a debit. So I'm going to copy that, scroll back down, right click, and paste 1, 2, 3. The amount will be $20,722. So that's going to be the debit of $20,722, or is it 772? 772. So there we have that, and we're going to have a credit of the same amount, and it's going to be going into the allowance for the delinquent. So we have the delinquent, here's the allowance for the delinquent. We need to make that go up, so we're going to do the same thing to it, which in this case is a credit, copying that and pasting it here. Let's post those last two out and see if it does what we expect it to do. What we expect it to do is make the current receivables go down to 0, the receivable and the allowance, and put that amount into the delinquent items. So we've got the taxes receivable delinquent. Let's do that first. Taxes receivable delinquent is here. We're going to post it to Z8, double click, go to the end of it, plus, scrolling down, we want to pick up that 67,786. So there we have that. Taxes receivable delinquent, and then we have taxes receivable current. Here it is on the journal entry. Here it is on the trial balance. We're going to go into Z6, something's in it, double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, scrolling back down, picking up that 67,786. When we hit enter, it should go down to 0. So that means the receivable has gone down to 0. That's good. That's what we want. Now we'll pick up the allowance portion. So we have the allowance for uncollectible for the current, and that's going to be here. Something's in it in Z7. Therefore, we're going to double click on it, go to the end of it, plus, scroll back down. We're going to put our cursor on that 20,772 and enter. That should make the amount go down to 0. Then we're going to go to the allowance for the delinquent, and so that's going to be here. The allowance for the delinquent, that's going to be here. We are in cell Z8, double clicking on it, go to the end of it, plus, scrolling back down, we want to pick up that 20,772, enter. So there we have that, and now we have moved the receivables from the current to the delinquent. That is putting us back in balance, indicated by the green zeros. And this is what our trial balance looks like at this point. So we'll scroll down slowly here. That is what we have. And then we're going to move on next time, recording more transactions. So we're going to keep on recording transactions next time, and then we will make financial statements from the trial balance that we have put together.